Hello, welcome back to the Happier Life Project, brought to you by the free, award-winning mental health and wellness app, My Possible Self. I'm your host, Gabby Sanderson, and today we're tackling something we all face, and that's how to own our struggles in the areas that challenge us the most. From navigating friendships and work pressures, to dealing with technology overload, dating dilemmas, and even toxic family environments. We're going to cover it all. And I couldn't think of a better guest to help us unpack these issues than Minaa B, a licensed therapist, mental health educator, social media mental health content creator and influencer, and she's an author whose expertise in emotional wellness and boundary setting has empowered many. Minaa is no stranger to the Happier Life Project. She joined us for an episode on confidence a while ago. Since then, she's written a powerful book called Owning Our Struggles, which is the central theme of today's show. Minaa's book, Owning Our Struggles, A Path to Healing and Finding Community in a Broken World, is all about acknowledging our pain, working through it with self-compassion, and finding strength in collective healing. The book centres on recognising, accepting and confronting our emotional and mental health challenges, rather than avoiding or suppressing them. Today you'll hear Minaa and I explore how to face some of these challenges head on, embrace our vulnerability, practice self-acceptance, and tap into the power of community care. We'll also discuss toxic productivity in the workplace and how to be more mindful of these pitfalls. Minaa also shares valuable insights on why it's crucial to be so intentional about who we allow to influence us online. I also asked Minaa for guidance on how we might begin to accept our parents' flaws and navigating emotionally harmful family dynamics, such as sibling rivalry or conflict. We also discuss the importance of building stronger connections with ourselves and others. And finally, we'll look at how to embrace our struggles without letting them define us. This episode is all about taking control of your healing journey. So, ready to find a healthier, happier you? Let's get started. Minaa B, it's fantastic to see you again. Welcome back to the Happier Life Project podcast. How have you been?
I've been well, Gabby. How are you?
I've not been feeling my best because I caught COVID again, but I'm over the worst. But you know, it just goes to show I think I'm quite healthy, but I've had it twice now and it really does clobber me. So
I understand. When I had COVID, I had it twice, but the second time I had no symptoms, which was interesting. But the first time it was very severe.
Right.
So, COVID is hard to deal with.
Yeah, man.
I do hope you get better soon.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Congratulations on the book. Since we did an episode, we recorded an episode, and it must have been at least a year and a half ago now, and that was about cultivating confidence. And since then, you've released a book about owning our struggles, which is what I'm going to be talking to you about today.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a while, so I'm really excited. The book has been out for a year now, so really excited to still be having conversations around the topic, especially since it's still so relevant, talking about community care and such a very disconnected world.
Absolutely. Well, I guess from the get-go then, when we're talking about owning our struggles, like what was the inspiration behind the book? I'm sure you've answered this many times already by now, but for me and our audience at My Possible Self, I guess when was the epiphany moment that this was like the direction you wanted to go in terms of writing a book?
Well, I am a social worker. I guess to give a little context to what I do, I'm a licensed social worker and I earned my degree from NYU, and NYU does focus on the clinical track, which basically means we're trained to be therapists. However, we also have other elements to social work that are very community oriented. So, as a social worker, I have always been very community focused while working with my clients, not only focusing on their individual problems, but also looking at the social infrastructure they live in, as
Mm.
well as the systemic issues that do impact their well being. And so, taking that knowledge that I have and that background that I have, let's fast forward now to 2020, which is the year that I created the proposal for my book. So, I always wanted to write a book on community care. I just never knew the direction I would go in with it until 2020 happened. And I realized, oh, we need a resource on how to integrate into a society where we feel safe being around each other, because the way 2020 was going,
Yeah.
we were literally being told through the media, through government guidelines, we were told that people were dangerous. And we were told to stay away from people. We were
Yeah.
told that we needed to stay 6 feet apart. And as a result of that, some of us had to isolate in homes or environments with people that they felt unsafe around. And so it just literally heightened this feeling of unsafety when
Mm.
it came to interactions. And outside of the pandemic, you had the murder of George Floyd that took place that really skyrocketed the Black Lives Matter movement and just how people viewed race in this world. And
Mm.
because of the video evidence that we had, a
Mm.
lot of people started to really grapple with racism in this country. And then later on in the year, I remember that's when there were the hate crimes happening in the Asian American community. So I just felt like so much was taking place that literally was pointing back to this feeling of people are scary. And
Mm.
so, how do we connect with others? And I wanted to write a book that gave people a framework on how we bring our full selves to community. And the whole premise of owning our struggles is how to heal from trauma through community care, utilizing community care principles to help people figure out how they can navigate their own individual traumas as well as the environmental and societal traumas they endure. So it's really a reflection and a guide on how to view yourself as a whole person, but
Mm.
also remember that you bring your full self to community. And so the same way we are harboring feelings of happiness and joy, we bring that to our community. But if we're also in a spirit of pain, unresolved trauma, racist ideologies, implicit biases, we're also going to bring that to our community. So
Mm.
we have to be examining the roles that we play in the fragmented communities that we exist in.
Mm. Thank you for that explanation. It's a very deeply personal book as well. You've touched on yeah, like I said, some deeply personal stuff that's relevant to you and your story. Was that always the intention too? And was that quite cathartic for you to go back and, I guess, owning your struggles? Was this a very healing thing for you personally? And so that's why you wanted to teach it to others, I guess, as well.
It definitely was a healing thing for me, specifically community care. I grew up in a Panamanian household. I'm first generation Panamanian, and my family did a really great job of instilling values of community care
Mm-hmm.
in me.
Mm-hmm.
They helped me understand things like social capital. They helped me understand the importance of networking and having a healthy support system. They helped me understand just how we need people as a way to thrive. So I did want to share pieces of my story specifically because community care played a big role in why I wanted to become a social worker. It
Mm-hmm.
also played a big role in my own healing. And my own healing also opened my eyes to the type of community member I am and the type of community member I want to be.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to model for the reader that I'm a human too. I wanted to humanize myself in this writing process.
Mm.
I also wanted the reader to have an understanding of why I chose to write about this book.
Mm.
And I wanted the reader to get to know me and see me as, yes, I am the expert here. I am the person who has the degree and the license and all the clinical hours and the training. Yes, I may have all of that, but I'm still a person. And I think that sometimes when you're reading these self-help books, you are being talked at. So
Mm.
you're often just reading the things the expert writes. But I really wanted the reader to feel a connection to the author.
Mm.
And I feel like one of the best ways to do that is to share a little bit about you and why you're writing this book and how it's deeply personal to you. It's not just a topic that seems trendy that you decided to grab and, write
Yeah.
about it. This is a topic that is dear to my heart. I talk about community care because it's a guiding principle in my own life, which
Yeah.
is why I chose to become a social worker, like I said. So that was really important to me as a writer.
It's hard, isn't it, now with when you talk about community care and we've done an episode with a doctor on the loneliness epidemic and loneliness, and it's like I think a lot of us know because of how we felt coming out of the pandemic, if we've been isolated, especially if we like maybe live alone or whatever. But then nurturing that community, it seems to be more difficult because the way technology is going and the way now we've been kind of brainwashed, like you said, to think people are scary. The community is sort of becoming less. So it feels that way to me because I guess I am exhibit A. I'm somebody that lives on their own and I really have to make an effort to kind of go out and seek it.
Yeah, it definitely has become increasingly difficult in this digital age that we're living in. I think a few of the reasons is people feel very burnt out.
Yeah.
And a lot of that burnout isn't just because we're working hard. A lot of that burnout is that technology is demanding more of our time. It is something that we are accustomed to engaging with. And
Mm.
I also think the fact that there are so many avenues to connect with someone, it became a bit overwhelming. So we used to live in an era where to connect with someone, you called their house phone or maybe you paged their beeper. And if they didn't answer their house phone, then you just didn't, you don't even know if they called because we didn't have voicemail at one point. Then we
Right.
did have voicemail. So we knew who to call back. And even when it came to being on the go, you picked up a payphone, right? And you paged somebody. And I think that's why there's also a generational gap with burnout too, where younger people, millennials and Gen Z in particular, especially younger millennials, are experiencing this feeling of burnout because they grew up in an era of technology, of
Mm.
rapid technology specifically. So I do think that being in a digital age where we have all of these devices, that's supposed to help us be connected. That's great, but our brains really are having a hard time keeping up with the different avenues that we can connect because it went from having a pager to then having a cell phone. And if you did chat with people online, you needed AOL dial-up, right? There was no Wi-Fi that we were tapping into that we could have on the go internet access. And then social media came about. And so now you can contact people via social media. So those are some of the things that I find has been very difficult for people to keep up with. And then I also just think that our skills in some ways are declining because
Yeah.
of social media. Our skills on knowing how to engage with people because of the warped perception of what it means to be beautiful or be accepted on social media is running rampant. A lot of people are taking those warped perceptions of what it means to show up as your full self, and now they're bringing it into their in real life experiences. So now you have a rise of people having social anxiety because, well, on social media, it's cool to look this way or it's acceptable to be this way. And that's what they say on social media. So now it's ingrained in my belief system. So now when I go to a public event, I'm assuming that I have to look a certain way or play the part because these are the messages I'm hearing online. So
Mm.
it's now dictating how I show up in real life, and it's causing more fear, more anxiety, this fear of rejection, this fear of being ostracized. All of these different things are playing a role in why sometimes in real life connections are suffering. And then there's just also that other layer of, ever since the pandemic, specifically when people started working from home, they lost connection to their third spaces, which are our social environments. And so you feel more inclined to do everything at home. You're working from home, you're working out from home,
Yeah.
you're just doing everything at home. So it's like, why go to the gym when I could build a gym in my house? And why go to a
Yeah.
co-working space when I can work in my home? And why do this? And so now people are isolating themselves and
Yeah.
not even realizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. In your book, when you talk about like the screen fatigue, I can certainly really resonate with that because I mean, I'm almost disgusted with how much of my life I'm looking at a screen. I mean, it's unavoidable from work, but then, like, what do I do when I finish work? I watch TV, and it's like, I don't join a gym because it's cheaper to do a YouTube workout video, like you just talked about, and then I'll be connecting on my device to like friends or family or dates or whatever it is. So, literally, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, God, I think about 90% of my waking hours must be looking at through a screen, which is depressing, actually, isn't it, when you think about it?
It's very depressing.
What's the answer then? Is there one? Is it just about owning it, like the book, owning our struggles with technology?
Well, the book really is about owning difficulties in life, but also problem solving.
Mm,
And those are the two things that we need. We do need to own that sometimes this is very depressing, but we also have to figure out a solution. The
yeah.
same way we are talking and we realize that it is really depressing to just always be in the house, there are so many other people who feel that way. And there are so many people who are still trying to do the work of cultivating in real life connections, of cultivating healthy friendships or even partnership. And there are plenty of people out there who really miss building healthy, secure attachments with human beings that they can touch and
Mm,
see face to face. So
mm,
we have to find our people. I think that's really what it's about.
yeah.
If you are a very social person right now, you may not dwell well with somebody who wants to be at home all day. And so you are going to have to be very discerning when it comes to the connections you're building, but
Mm,
you also have to be proactive and just find your people, find the people who have the same values and interests that you have. And there are still so many people who are connecting offline. There are so many support groups that are still connecting offline. There are different meetup groups that are happening. There's been a rise of walking clubs
yeah.
in different cities. So these are the people who want to be outside. These are not the people that want to jog in place in a living room watching a YouTube video, right? These are people who they're going on a walk and everybody could get up and go on the walk, right? And I
Yeah.
want to be mindful of people with disabilities, of course, but you could decide that if you want to walk, you can just get up and go. But these people are being intentional and saying, no, I want to walk with people. So I'm
Yeah.
going to join a local walking club. And those are the groups that you have to reach out to. Those are the groups that you have to put yourself in so that you are meeting people who might have similar interests as you do. But a lot of this is about owning it and then deciding, okay, so what am I going to do differently? I need to create an action plan.
And pushing past the intimidation factor. And again, probably because of the vicious circle that COVID has created of getting over yourself, I suppose, and the hurdle of like maybe going on your own and meeting up with a group of strangers who might turn out to be your friends. They also might not, though, but you don't know
Mhm.
until you try, I guess.
Exactly, exactly. So that's what it's really all about, putting yourself out there, trying and seeing what unfolds.
Mm. And just sort of touching a little bit more on work, you explore toxic productivity and the idea that self-worth is tied to achievement. We've also done we've done a couple of episodes now on burnout. But I still think people are struggling to let go of this burnout. I think you called it the burnout badge of honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you have to say on that? Because again, that is a big struggle that is a common theme, I think, for a lot of the working world.
It is. One of the things I say in the book is the importance of compassion around that piece because that is a systemic problem.
Yeah.
We in American society have created a culture of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps And those ideologies are simply ingrained in the individuals of society. So we didn't get here on our own. I
Mm.
do think it's important to acknowledge that because it's not just a self problem, it is a systemic problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem because we're required to be in the workplace 5 days a week, at least a minimum of 5 days a week. It's a problem because we're required to give 40 hours of full-time work. It's a problem because in order to have health insurance in America, it's tied to your employment. So
Mm.
you see how it's difficult to get off the hamster wheel of productivity if I am being told my survival is connected
Yeah.
to my productivity. And so that's a really difficult thing to get out of.
Yeah.
And so one of the methods that I offer really is just learning to be intentional with your personal life because your professional life has to be there if you want to succeed. I don't care how rich you are, we could turn on the news and see celebrities still work. They
Mm.
still work regardless of how much money they have. And we don't know the systems that they have in place, who they have to pay, that they feel like they haven't retired yet. Some
Mm.
people will call it wealth hoarding, but we don't know the intricate details of their lives to know why they still feel like they need more wealth.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, regardless of what class bracket you're in, work is something we're all participating in because we have to in order to survive.
Right.
So you have to just be very intentional about how you're going to structure your life outside of work. That means deciding what boundaries you need to set. Do you need to be working on weekends? Do you need to chronically be doing overtime? If the answer is yes, then you really need to use a lot of discernment regarding how much extra time you're going to give to work, especially if you find yourself feeling miserable or
Mm.
burnt out or unsatisfied or depressed because you feel like your life is work. At some point, you do have to make a decision to realize you're choosing work over self-care. And that is a hard part because
Mm.
sometimes we feel like we have no choice. And maybe that is the case, but even when you feel like you have no choice, you're still making a choice.
Yeah.
So you have to use discernment to recognize how much of my time am I going to give this thing? Do I need to be doing overtime every single week or can I do it every other week so that I can have a little more personal time to myself? Do I need to set better boundaries in the workplace so that people know I don't check my emails after my shift is over? And those boundaries are with me. So I can put up a vacation responder if I don't feel comfortable
Mhm.
vocalizing it, but also I just don't have to answer these emails. I don't have to answer the emails on the weekend or late at night. So there are systems that we can do, systems I mean that we can put in place to ensure that we are practicing self-care and
Mm.
honoring the downtime that we have and recognizing that you're still a whole person when you clock out.
Mm.
And you have to tend to that whole person because sometimes we tend to the professional side of us. We're always tending to the person that's clocked in
Yeah.
and working that 8 to 12 hour shift. And then when we clock out, we really don't know who we are or what we want to do. And that's how productivity becomes toxic when your life literally is centered around work and not being intentional
Mm.
about developing an identity outside of work. So you just have to get comfortable with choosing yourself and making space for yourself while working. That is the goal.
Mm. This is definitely personal to me, but I'll just share it because you might find this a bit interesting. I'm actually taking on another job. It's definitely going to push me over my limit work wise in terms of hours, but I'm drawn to it because of, I think, the nature of the job I'll enjoy because it's writing, but also because 50% of the time it'll be me in an office working with other people. And for my self care, currently working remotely on my own, I think it's going to be really, really good for me in that respect. Whether I can juggle that with my other commitments, let's see. But I guess it's an individual journey, isn't it? You know?
It is. And sometimes we don't know until we do it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you bring that awareness up because you won't know until you
Yeah.
start. And when you start juggling all of it, you start to realize what balls can drop and what balls can't drop.
Mm.
And that's when you realize, you know what, these are the things that I have to consistently juggle. But
Yeah.
there you start to realize too, I'm juggling things that really aren't that important. or I'm juggling things that used to be important. So why am I still juggling it? You know, that automatic
Mm,
reaction that we have to certain things, we can be on autopilot for a lot of things and not realize we're on autopilot until we take a step back to say, oh, actually don't have to spend so much time doing this thing. It's just a natural reaction to do it, but I don't have to keep doing it at the pace that I'm doing it. So
mm.
sometimes we just need the experience so that we can sort through what's important and what's not.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be very weird for me being around actual humans because that's been like since 2020, I've been working remotely. So it's going to be an adjustment. Um, a big section in the book is about the struggle for intimacy. And we're talking like friendships as well as like romantic relationships. And I really liked the fact that you addressed how valuable friendships are for our mental health. And I think that does get overlooked and it does absolutely go into what we're talking about community. Yeah, the role of friendships in mental health. What have you observed?
Yeah, so I've observed a few things. I would say the core things is that we lack a lot of resources related to friendship. So there's a plethora of books and resources on navigating romantic partnership.
Mm,
And because there are no guidelines on friendship, a lot of distortion takes place. The first thing I realize is that a lot of people don't realize friendship falls on a spectrum. And you'll meet people who everybody is their friend. But when you really drill into the nature and the intricacies of their friendship, you might realize, oh, well, maybe person A sounds like an acquaintance. Person B sounds like they're simply your colleague. Person C sounds like your social friend that you really only engaged with when you're socializing or going to an event. Maybe person D sounds like your best friend, the person that you have deep intimacy with.
mm,
And all four of those relationships are important and beautiful to exist in. But we naturally meet people and throw the title friendship on it. And it's interesting because when we look at romantic relationships, we have those different structures in place that give us a clear understanding of the boundaries of that relationship. And so if you're dating someone, we know that you're not married to that person, you're simply dating them.
mhm,
If you're courting that person, you're at an intentional level of the relationship where you are considering taking that next step of commitment. If you're engaged, you also recognize that there's past history and they're also moving forward to strengthen their partnership by choosing marriage.
mhm,
That's what we all know as an engagement. And then if somebody is married, you also have the assumption that they have history as well. We don't assume that if you're married, you met your partner this morning. You have the assumption that this person has relational history that led up to the decision of them being married. And then we also culturally, because marriage is a cultural thing too. So depending on your culture, you will have a clear understanding of their relationship. With friendship, we don't really have that. We just have friendship.
yeah.
And so, because we don't have those clear guidelines and structures, it creates this messiness, in my
Yeah.
opinion, where we are courting people who only want to date us, and we are acting as if we're married to people who only want to date us. And there are some friendships that are a marriage. There
Mm,
are some friendships that are an engagement. And there are some friendships that you're just simply dating. And then you realize, oh, you know what? I don't think that this relationship is going to work. And then it just fades away.
mm,
So I think we need to be more discerning about the people we call friend and recognize first what it means to be a friend. How do you define friendship? I always tell people the core pillars of a friendship are trust, respect, reciprocity, and psychological safety. When you have those things, you already have a foundation that engages in relational building.
mm,
And when you have those four things, you might have an acquaintanceship. You can still have a close friendship. But when you have those four things at the root of the relationship, there's a chance that that friendship can thrive.
Mm.
So I think that's one of the things that really is disrupting how people engage in friendship. And I think there's another piece to it where culturally, specifically, I used to work with Black and Brown communities. And because of trauma, a lot of my clients grew up in households where they were told that you didn't need friends, you just needed your family. So now you have these adults that are moving through society, not realizing the importance of healthy, secure friendships. And it's even worse when you realize, okay, you're telling me I only need family. But when I think of those four pillars of friendship, trust, respect, reciprocity, and psychological safety, I don't get that from my
I
family.
was going to say, you don't.
Right? Right.
You're
Right. And
very
those are
lucky
the
if you
pillars.
do.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
those are the pillars of any relational foundation, not just a
Uh,
friendship.
they should
So,
really be teaching it at school, shouldn't they? How to
yeah.
cultivate deep friendships, because that can carry us. I've always been very blessed, I think, in that department with my friends, particularly like my girlfriends. But like, I watch like my niece growing up, and she's had certainly struggles in that department. And again, probably because everybody's living through a screen now as well, whereas when I was growing up, they weren't. But like, yeah, my friendships I cherish more than anything. And then it's because I guess, as you described, they've got the four foundational parts.
Yeah. And I think it's the influences too. Generationally, we have different influences
Mm.
that's teaching us about connection. And I think in this digital age, what's different from former generations is that we have moved to a place because of social media where at the end of the day, it's accessible to anybody. And so that means it's accessible to people who are hurting. And when people hurt, sometimes they will get on their soapbox
Mhm.
and project their hurt onto
Mm.
other people. And if you continue to consume content that is rooted in harm and negativity, you will be influenced by that content.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to be mindful about your influences because if you don't have healthy examples of relational structures in your home life, that means you're going to have to build it somewhere else. And going online can be a healthy place to find it. But going back to discernment, it's about using wisdom and deciding who you're going to listen to, who
Mm.
you're going to get feedback from. Does this person talk from a place of healthiness? Does this person talk from a place of wholeness? Does this person talk from a place of critical thinking? Does this person talk from a place of empathy, compassion, and understanding and nuanced thinking? But
Mm.
if this is somebody who's making a lot of generalizations about one group of people or multiple groups of people, those are some red flags. So I think generationally, that's where Gen Z is suffering a lot because
Mhm.
we have TikTok. Everybody is talking, labeling everyone a narcissist. Everyone is labeling somebody as harmful. And
Everybody has
that
ADHD.
influences you. Everyone has, right, everyone has something,
Yeah.
and we're not really being influenced by people who are having the insights that they need to help them cultivate the skills that they may need to
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah.
So
Qualified
it's,
really to have the
yeah,
platform that they have, and the responsibility of people that are so influenced.
exactly. And I'm a millennial. I'm a mid-age millennial, and I'm very old school. And I tell people, continue to stick to the old practices of learning, embrace the new ones, embrace the podcast, embrace those things, but keep please going to your library and buying books, picking up books or buying books. Please keep going to conferences. Please keep inserting yourself in certain spaces that you are going to learn from people who really have done a lot of work to get to where they are to teach the things that they're teaching. Just
Yeah,
be very, very mindful.
absolutely. Well, I'll ask you one question on family dynamics, going back to owning our struggles and accepting our parents' flaws if they aren't able to deliver on those foundational areas, or if they pitting siblings against each other, or like sibling rivalry, if we're in some kind of like toxic family environment, how do we accept what's going on, but also, I guess, try and break away from the cycle, the patterns?
Both things are a choice, and I know that's so hard to hear, but acceptance is learning to look at your environment and recognize I'm different. This doesn't fit well with my beliefs and my values and the goals that I have for myself. And I need to honor that I'm different. It doesn't mean that I need to change those people. And it doesn't mean that in order for me to thrive, the people around me have to act like me. You just have to acknowledge that you're different. And when you learn to acknowledge that you're different, it opens up a level of empathy and compassion and recognizing why you're different.
Mm.
I'm different because I have a different perception of what it means to take care of myself. I'm different because I also was born in a generation where mental health was normalized. I'm different because I was born in a generation where therapy was normalized. I think when we can really get into the intricate details of why we're different from our family members, that can also open up a level of acceptance regarding their flaws. Because we do have to remember that generational gap. And a lot of parents will say they did their best, and to them, they really did. They did the best with the knowledge that they had. And you, as a person, can say, well, you know what? I'm different from you, but why am I different from you? Oh, I realize I'm different because look at the things that I'm able to access that you didn't get to access. Look at the things that I have the privileges to do in my current society that you didn't have the privileges to do. Because those things do play a role in why we're different. It does. And
Mm.
so that I think is often the first step because it allows you to see your parents as people
Mm.
who weren't afforded certain opportunities you have. And it's a privilege that we get to sit here and talk about mental health and not be concerned about being condemned or
Yeah.
harmed. It's a privilege that parents in our current society get to talk about having mental health struggles without the fear of their kids being taken away. And, to some extent, that can still happen, but not to the extent of, we get to sit here and talk about different struggles that parents face and talk about postpartum and talk about different things that generations before us did
Mm.
not have the luxury or the privilege to do. They did not have Wi-Fi access to be able to log on their phones and read articles on overcoming depression or even understanding what depression is. If they were burnt out, they had to deal with it. There was no pushback, right? Now we have so many shifts happening in society that allow us to operate a certain way. And your parents probably didn't get that. So they literally just did the best with what they knew. And if you feel like the best that they did still is something that is extremely harmful to you, your well-being, going back to those pillars, trust, respect, psychological safety, and reciprocity, if you realize that your parent just hasn't cultivated the skills that they need to offer you those things, then it's okay to create a chosen family. It is okay to decide that you're going to create distance. And there are some people who have decided that they're just going to choose estrangement. And all of those things are okay. I think it's also about honoring that your parents probably chose estrangement also, and it was easier because no one was on social media reaching out to them on Facebook saying, you haven't spoken to your mother in 2 months, right? Nobody did that. It was easier to just pick up and go and say, I'm going to travel cross country and never see my family again. It was easier to decide you're going to move
Hmm.
and never speak to your family again because once you move, you have a different house number. And how they're going to find you? They're going to go through the yellow pages to find you, right? Like it was so much easier. Where now in our digital age, you can access anyone at any moment, right? Anywhere they go, right? And even your family members can hunt you down and find you because they're following you on Facebook. They're following you on social media. They're doing all of these things that still have access to you.
Right.
So I just think it's really all about holding people with compassion, but that does not mean that you have to experience harm because you can have compassion for people and still exercise boundaries.
Yeah. And compassion for yourself.
Exactly.
So as we're starting to wrap things up, when it comes to owning our struggles, but also not letting them define us, how do we strike that balance?
Hmm. It's really all about allowing yourself to be human. I know that's really vague, but being human means that we're going to make mistakes because we don't know everything, even if we like to believe we do. And owning our struggles is actually an opportunity for us to learn. It's an opportunity for us to realize where we're messing up and use discernment to figure out how we're going to be better and do better. And I think that when we approach life through that lens, it makes it so much easier to navigate because there's a great level of compassion in knowing that I'm a human who was brought into this world that had to figure out how to stay afloat in a world that's constantly changing. When a baby is born, we don't expect that baby to know how to walk immediately. We do the work of letting that baby first learn how to crawl, and then they babble before they start talking. And just because you grew into an adult now doesn't mean you have life figured out. You don't. I think that's really all about the whole process, right? That's what the process is about. Realizing that you actually don't have life figured out no matter how old you are. There's still so much to learn because as society changes, you have to keep up with it. And as relationships change, you have to keep up with it too. And as you experience things in life, you have to figure out how it makes you feel, the impact it has on you, and what you need to do to move forward. So, owning our struggles really is owning our humanity.
If readers could take away one key lesson, just one key lesson from your book, what would you want it to be?
That self-care is the bridge to community care, and community care is the bridge to community healing.
Love it. Minaa, you rock. I can't let you go before we've got a new, well, it's not even new anymore, but I don't think we did it last time we did a podcast together. It's the Happier Life Project's last 5 in 5. It's the same 5 questions that I ask every guest to wrap up the episode. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. When and where are you at your happiest?
I would say lately I'm at my happiest when I'm going on a walk on the boardwalk. I feel very happy when I do that.
What's your favorite thing to do that nourishes your mental health?
Listening to an audiobook, specifically a novel.
What piece of advice do you now know that you wished somebody would have told you earlier that would have made you a happier person?
It's okay to mess up.
What is the most important one thing that needs to change to make the world a happier place?
I would say people need to cultivate a sense of resiliency and defining what it really means to be happy. When you're happy with yourself, you can be happy with others and thrive in society. But I think our happiness meter constantly moves, and we have to figure out what truly defines our happiness.
Okay, last question. What is a simple, actionable first step we can take when it comes to owning our struggles that will help us on our journey to building a happier life?
Go outside and meet people.
Yeah, I love
Go
that.
outside and meet people.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, I'm going to point again to how people can find out more. Your website is www.minaa, spell MINAAB, the letter B.com. And you're on the gram, Instagram.com/Minaa_B. And you've got your own podcast, Mindful with Minaa, which I was listening to the episode today on, what did you call it? Touch deprivation and skin hunger.
Yeah.
Again, I could relate.
I'm sure many people can in this society, right? So Thank you so much for this conversation.
Hello, it's Gabby back with you. Thank you again to the wonderful Minaa B. And thank you to you, my friend, for listening to this episode of the Happier Life Project podcast. And as always, I just ask for one more minute of your precious time while I run through the important housekeeping. If you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app, which will signpost you to the correct information for immediate expert advice. Those of you who are listening on one of the podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is completely free to download, so you don't need to worry about it costing you anything. If you are in crisis or you think you may have an emergency, please do call your doctor or the emergency services immediately. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the interviewer, which is me, and the interviewees. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as a substitute for professional or medical advice. Our partners at the Priory Healthcare are not involved in the production or content of this podcast. And if you are listening on one of the podcast platforms to the Happier Life Project, if you haven't already subscribed and or left a review, it really does help us out. I say it every week, and I'm not just saying it for the sake of saying it. It helps others to find us, and it really does motivate and incentivize us to keep doing what we do for you too. And to find and follow us on social media if you're not already there. We're most active on Instagram, and we're at My Possible Self, and I've been at Radio Gabby. Until the next one, do take care. Bye for now.